Our schedule is so off recently, and it's so my fault.
It's mine too. We've been off for like, what, a month now? Something like that.
No, yeah, like off schedule, yeah. Like 2-3 weeks ago, I was like, oh, Tuesday's a good day to finally publish this. And then, of course, our little one was in the hospital this last week. So it was like, oh, I'll do it today, hospital. Oh, I'll do it today, still in hospital. Oh, I'll do it today, I give up. Like,
Yeah, well, good news is that your little one's fine. So
he is freaking great. He was running around the house last night, just living his best life.
there you go. That's good. Those early childhood sicknesses are pretty scary. So yeah, especially when you're like, yeah, in the hospital, not just a sick at home situation. That's rough.
Yeah, and it was a little weird in the sense like he was okay. So he had RSV, and like that's a real common, I guess, childhood illness, but it was hard for him to like breathe on his own. And it wasn't that like he was not okay, it's just he like needed oxygen to like be comfortable and sleep well and things. And so like they gave him antibiotics, so like they gave him IV. Like he needed the stuff, but at the same time, like they were like, this isn't like something to worry about per se. We just need to keep him here to get him better. And so like people are like checking in on me, and it was super awesome, but it was kind of like, yeah, I mean, he's okay. I'm like working. Like it's just like a sickness he's at the hospital for. Like it's not an emergency. So
Yeah, well, that's good then.
yeah, super lucky.
Yeah, when you told me about it, I was like, "Oh my god, that sounds bad." But
yeah, you hear hospital and you think like, "Oh no," but luckily it wasn't. And like it was hard enough like worrying about him going to the hospital and staying there. So I'm super lucky and grateful that he is home and happy.
Yeah. Well, this week we have Andrew Mason on the show again. Welcome back, Andrew.
Hey guys.
What's going on? What's new with you?
Since the last time I was on, I got a new job. So now I'm working for CodeFund, which if anyone doesn't know is an ethical ad serving company. I probably could have figured out a better way to say that. But basically we put ads on people's websites to help fund open source. They don't have any tracking, so we don't track our users. We don't follow you around the internet like everyone else. And we're just trying to empower open source and people putting out content in the community to get paid for that.
That's awesome. How are you liking it? When did you start, by the way?
I started in early October and I love it.
Cool. You guys have probably some pretty interesting challenges with like, you are embedding your ads and having to basically keep up with do you have to keep up with effectively like the traffic that goes to these sites your ads are embedded on? You basically have to do a, page request for every page request they get because you're embedding the ads.
So basically, and it's possible that I'm going to say this wrong, but basically we have a little JavaScript script that you can embed on your site. And then anytime someone goes to your site, it pings our Rails app. So we're serving I think 50 million requests per day, per month, maybe.
Either way, it's probably per month, I would guess, but still, that's a ton of requests. It's like 50 million is over 10 million a day, or a million a day, I mean. So yeah, that's Rails can't scale numbers.
Yeah, Nate is so proud of that. Because we have the ads serve very, very fast, and we have 100% cache rate with Postgres. We're running on Heroku, with not an expensive bill. So yeah, it's pretty impressive to kind of get in there and see how everything works and try to, get my feel for it.
So you said the 100% cache rate with Postgres. So is that everything you're serving up is already cached in Postgres, and then it doesn't really have to query because it's already in memory?
Yeah, the data for each ad. Oh god, Nate's gonna kill me when I say this wrong. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, everything is cached, like for sure. All the data should be cached, and we like the Postgres tables have like 100% cache rate according to Heroku. Cache hit rate.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
So there were two things I was thinking about when you said that. And first is that when you said Heroku, I realized we need we need some kind of sound effect. And when people say Heroku, we can hit like a Hatchbox button so that anytime someone hears the word Heroku, they immediately start associating with Hatchbox, and then Chris gets more Hatchbox sales.
I like it.
Shoot, I forgot the other thing. You said Rails doesn't scale in your sarcastic voice. Let's talk about that tweet that went around from Shopify.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I saw that
Friday one. So it was shared in the Podia Slack, but like we kept up with like how many, like we thought it was impressive how many sales like Shopify was doing for Black Friday. Because they give you like real time numbers, and then they tweeted something about, I'll have to link to it or somebody can read it and share it, but like Rails doesn't scale. Oh, by the way, we did like billions and millions of all these requests and email transactions and things like that. And then that really kind of pissed off people on the internet. And they were like, well, you could have spent less or all this stuff. But yay, Rails.
Yeah, they're like just looking for excuses to hate on it at that point. And it's just, I don't know. It's not cool. That's the thing that it comes down to, I think. And it's like people don't want to see that it's possible to build something really fast and efficient with Rails. It's kind of funny and sad at the same time. And they're probably not necessarily people you want in your community, so maybe it's a good thing. I don't know.
Maybe. DHH got in on the conversation as well, which was fun.
What did he say? I can't remember.
Oh, I had to think back. It was along the lines of, I don't know what you would expect from DHH. Like, I think I read something. If it wasn't from him, it was someone else in the thread that was like, yeah, but like think about how quicker they were able to develop, or like how happier the developers were, like with the experience of developing versus like programming for the machine only. Kind of like the de facto kind of argument we have. But yeah, I don't know. It was, I needed a little Thanksgiving drama, so that was good.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. I was like impressed with, I think they said they had like 125,000 unicorn workers or something for processing all those requests. And I was like, man, that is nuts. Like you could send 125,000 requests, even if there was just one, I don't know how many servers they have those running across, but like, it's just a huge, huge amount of workers, which is really cool.
Yeah, I was trying to find that tweet. I know Nate was commenting on that too about how, yeah, they could have used Go, but how much longer would it have taken them to get started? And by then, were other people going to be in that market, and like the developer happiness, and how many less developers you need to have to like have a successful Rails app?
Yeah, and I would imagine, e-commerce changes really quickly with, I don't know. It's just really complicated too because they have such a global business. They've got to worry about shipping in any country and sales tax in every single country and whatever else. Like the speed you need to probably have to keep up with that is just got to be crazy. So, yeah, at the end of the day, like it works and it works well for them, and that's great. But I don't know. People don't seem to want to believe that, which is strange, but people are weird.
Yeah, I tried to Google for the tweet, and I ended up with an article about Trump reinstating tariffs on aluminum. Well, I'm just going to give up on trying to find that tweet.
You don't want to talk about that on the podcast?
I do good to want to talk about that in real life. And this isn't real life.
Yeah, I am the same. I don't want to talk about that with anyone.
Oh, so this is a thing that's kind of relevant that came up in my life 2 nights ago. So I was laying in bed. My oldest was with my mother-in-law, and my wife and child are in the hospital. And so like, I got this idea, and it's like one of those ideas where you're like, oh, this is cool. Like I could sleep on this, or I could go do it right now at 11 o'clock. And so obviously I chose the latter, and I was kind of like winding down. It was like 1 or 2 a.m. And I was like, well, I'll just I'll get CI working. And last time Andrew was here, we talked about GitHub Actions. The last episode, Chris and I recorded, we talked about GitHub Actions. And this time I have actual experience with GitHub Actions, and I would love to figure out if I am the worst programmer in the world or if it's really just like this much work to set up.
Yeah, I have a ton of experience with GitHub Actions. I actually got this week, and I got one-to-one parity with the Circle CI suite that we're running on GitHub Actions. And no, you are not the worst programmer ever, because it is incredibly difficult, like very much more than it needs to be.
Yeah, it all started with my app's Ruby 6.5. And so, I just did the like build Ruby or whatever the action is. And it's like, oh, you specified 265. We need to use 263. So last week, Chris and I talked about that, and Chris mentioned I could use a Docker container. So I was like, okay, cool. So I used like container, image, Ruby 265. It pulled Ruby 265 down, no problem. But then, because the Rails app, so I needed to install Postgres. And so I used this guide from this very popular, very wonderful site called GoRails, and pulled the Postgres stuff in. But then it wouldn't install. It would like pull the Postgres image and install, but it wouldn't install whatever the like Linux tool it needs is. And so then I took 2 steps back and I said, okay, maybe this is like because I'm doing a container image for Ruby and it's not working with Postgres. And so then I went to Andy Kroll's website. He does this really cool newsletter. It's like One Ruby thing. I can't remember the name of it. But it's really cool. And I remember getting an email about it. So I just basically copy and pasted his whole file in. And of course, it still didn't work because Ruby 2.6.5 container and Postgres weren't talking. So then I Googled and I found someone who was like, yeah, listen, this has been a problem. So I just made an action for using like Ruby build, and it'll just install Ruby, whatever version you give it. I was like, you demand. So I went, put that action in, got it working. And then it took 5 minutes to install Ruby 2.6.5. But he was like, hey, here's how you cache it. So I cached it. And then I got to where it was like trying to set up the Rails app, and it set up and it was ready to run the test. But Webpack failed because I hadn't considered Yarn yet. So I went back to Chris's tutorial, figured out how he did Yarn, came back, put Yarn in. Everything ran, except it took 5 minutes to run bundle install. So then I learned how to cache bundler. And then finally, honest to God, an hour and a half later, I had a passing test suite. And I thought, I have to be doing this wrong.
Were your system tests passing too?
That's funny. No, come on, I didn't write system tests. Come on now.
Oh, see, that's the hardest part to do with Actions.
No, this was like, I started this idea at 11 and I only had like 5 tests because I only worked on it for like an hour and a half.
Yeah. But what you basically described is basically like how it is. In terms of like using Ruby 2.6.5, because we have Ruby 2.6.5 at CodeFund, And I didn't want to use Ruby build or like the other methods people were saying, like, because basically at that point you can really use Ruby build, or you can even go as far as use like RBEM or RVM or whatever you want. But I didn't want to do that because I knew that was going to be slow. So I wrote my own Docker image and I run the actions inside of my own image, which,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So along with that, I pass it like the environment variables for where a Redis and Postgres are going to be. And I also install Node and Yarn inside of that, as well as the libraries it needs and Chrome to run the system tests. And Bundler 2.0.2.
Yeah, that, man, even because Andrew, you helped me with the, when they announced caching finally, you helped me get that working because, I had copied the bundler install command from somewhere. And then, of course, like, doesn't quite match up to what the example for the bundler cache is. And so, just debugging those little things of like just bad examples is really time consuming with all this. And then, of course, you have to run it and find out whether or not it works. And it takes you a good 5 minutes or whatever to wait for it to fail or something. And then you got to try it again, run your config, see if it works. And it's just, man, it is a slow process to get your CI running on pretty much anywhere, I feel like.
Yeah. I was thinking, so there's a framework we haven't really talked about much on the show called Laravel, and there are two people in the community making a CI service like specific. I think it's specific to Laravel. It may not be, but I'm pretty sure it is. It's called Chipper CI. And I was like, man, if somebody made that for Rails, like, that'd be awesome. Like, do that. I will, like, for Heroku, I use Heroku CI, but like I've been trying to use Hatchbox a lot more lately. So like, if you're listening and you're really good at building CI tools, like, build a Rails specific one and charge me for it, and I'll pay for it.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I bet you it wouldn't be too hard to kind of add that as a feature to Hatchbox because I'm already setting up your code to run. So if I just had not the deploy script, but one that just ran your tests instead, it probably wouldn't be too bad. And it's going to do all the same exact stuff. That's a good idea.
Let's start it right now. And let's start it, I mean, you start it and I will cheer you on.
We'll do it.
Seriously, I think it's like something I don't really have the knowledge or really the willpower to want to do, but like, it's totally something I want.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, this is the thing that like people like Heroku for, because it's just basically a push and deploy and you're good to go for the most part, because it's kind of Rails has the stuff built in and then Heroku has the stuff on their side to make sure that Rails runs with very little changes anymore in their platform. And you get a lot of these like generic tools that like GitHub Actions that just don't know the details of the framework, and so they don't tailor it to it. And then instead, as you as a developer have to go figure out the nuances to make it work. And that's just like not how things should be in the long run. So I bet you that in the very long run, probably those systems will all be standardized, hopefully, at some point, so that they can make it smooth out of the box. But in the meantime, yeah, that's probably absolutely something I should add to Hatchbox.
Totally. I think it would be awesome. Like, Heroku does a really good job of it because like it's just a Heroku dyno. So like if your app deploys to Heroku, like it will deploy to CI and run. And like I really like Circle CI. I'm not good with the Dockers and like making containers like expose themselves to each other. Like, and I know that's one of the things like GitHub Actions you have to do. You have to say, like, I want to run this Postgres service and here are the ports. And then I need to, like, wait for it to be ready and stuff like that. Like, it's all stuff I could learn, don't get me wrong. I'm just not familiar with it yet. And so if somebody was like, oh, don't worry, we got that, I'd be like, oh, okay, here's all the love I can give as a human.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what everyone wants as the default, you know? And then if you need to break out of it, you need the option to, you know, customize it. But like having a default that just understands how it probably should be. By default, like, you know, we all are used to the Rails running on port 3000, like that sort of thing just is standard. Like if we had, I don't know, Postgres is the default or something, or it always ran on the same port, then you wouldn't have to go specify it in your YAML config and so on. And also the YAML configs get really annoying because they're just hard to read through and reason about sometimes. I think they work, but once you have a YAML file that's several hundred lines long, it's like not really that fun to read through and manage and figure out like, oh, I accidentally pasted this thing and it didn't have the right tabbing and that's why it's not working or whatever. It's a mess.
Yeah. Yeah, and Circle CI is really cool because, like, you know, you define your steps and whatnot or your different services and, like, so I mentioned this last week, but like work, I have a Jest suite and a Pronto suite, which runs RuboCop. And it just knows to like fire those up as separate testing worlds that have different setup. And it's like, that stuff's really cool. And I think there's a lot of value to that. It's mostly when I'm working on my side projects and I want CI, I'm like I wasted more time than I should have the other night on that because I just got so invested. So
I can relate to the investment. I love Circle CI. We use it at CodeFund. And after experimenting with GitHub Actions, I would never switch away from it. At least for like the main test suite. Now I would consider running like, you know, the linters and stuff in GitHub Actions just because I mean, they could run in parallel almost, but I don't know. Sometimes I wonder when I'm running, like all my tests, like I usually have them, I know you can specify different, you know, like jobs in Circle, but I usually just put them all in one because if one of them fails, I don't really want to keep running the entire thing, you know? I'm like, all right, this failed, stop, let me go fix it. And also like using, because we have like a script that we have that you can run on a pre-commit or pre-push, I guess, that will just like lint everything and fix it up for you. But I've created like a RuboCop action in GitHub Actions that you can literally just drop into your like an action file that will run RuboCop and then output the errors in GitHub using like their checks API. So it'll like show up on the line with the error.
yeah, so that's the other thing is like I think there's a lot of value to GitHub Actions. I think there's a lot of cool things to be done. So that's why literally I was just thinking maybe I just don't understand how this works. But also too, like it's still pretty new. Like it just came out of beta. So like I'm sure these are all things that will continue to improve.
Yeah, that's like one of the complaints people had was the cache storage size was like, what was it, 400 megabytes or something? It was fairly small, and it was like, you know, you run all the bundle install stuff, and that takes 150 megs or something for a stock Rails app, you know, and Ruby and whatever. So you don't have a whole lot of room to cache things, which is like, you really want to try and cache as much as possible. And if that's going to use most of your storage space just for a blank Rails app, then what happens when you have something more complex? And they were like, so I think some of the other places had like maybe 2 gigs of storage that you could use for caching. I think these are the things that would make building my own CI a little bit harder for Hatchbox, or you have to, you know, always run a extra server or something to run your CI. I'm not entirely sure. I'm gonna have to think about these things though, but that would be fun to talk about too, building that.
That is fascinating. I even really wouldn't mind paying for a separate server to do that. But Andrew really got my brain spinning back in the other direction of using it to lint, and I think we've even talked about using it to run prettier for formatting. But being able to actually go to the line and stuff, we do that with Pronto when it runs on Circle, but it would be really nice if that all lived in GitHub. So maybe I am focusing on GitHub Actions as too much of CI and not as much of a bunch of other cool shit.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Being with your code base, you can do a whole lot more like what Andrew's doing with it.
Yeah, I'm actually writing a blog post right now that's going to be on our website, but that's kind of where at the end of I looked up from my computer and it was 5 a.m. and I was like, damn it. But basically I view GitHub Actions right now not as a CI service. If you want to interact with your project on GitHub and run linters and stuff, or you can even you can run prettier and have it commit to the code to that branch, and all kinds of stuff like that. I view GitHub Actions for that. I would not be running my test suite on GitHub Actions. It's too slow and it's not worth it. And there's it's just the Wild West over there.
That's really cool too, because on my side projects I use standard RB, which Test Double kind of championed up. It may have actually just been Justin Searles, I don't know. But I really value the art of code, but even more than that, I really value consistency. And so I really like formatters for consistency, which I know is a hot topic. We could probably have a 6-hour podcast episode debate on with 30 different people. But that would be cool, because usually before I commit my code, I just run standard RB -- fix and let it make everything consistent. So that is cool. And that is something I'm going to explore.
Yeah, I have a standard RB check action, though it needs a little bit of love. I haven't updated it recently with some of the changes I've updated for the RuboCop one, but I haven't added in the ability to actually fix the code. I'm probably going to add that into a different action to itself, because it's not as easy or intuitive as you would think. And I don't know, but it's definitely possible. We use standard RB at CodeFund, so I love standard now. I used to always be on RuboCop, but I really like standard.
Yeah, I've started to really embrace some of the standard things that I thought were weird at first. They just kind of grow on you. So I'm very much if you tell me that's what I should do, I'll do it. It's when RuboCop's oh, always prefer single quoted strings unless you're doing interpolation. I was this is the gold standard. And then standard RB, a lot of standard there. Standard RB just says just use double quoted strings. And now I'm yeah, that makes sense, because at work we use the RuboCop rules for single or double quotes, and I'll write a spec and be it single quote shouldn't, and then shouldn't has an apostrophe in it, which kills that line. So then I got to go back and make that wrapping string a double quote, and that kind of stuff just gets avoided if I use double quoted string. So
yeah, even when I did use RuboCop, we always ran it with double strings. It's not worth it. The only thing from standard that I don't like, but I'm not gonna change the config to do it, is I really like having an extra line after a guard clause. If you're returning on a line, I like there to be a blank line and then the rest of the logic. I don't know why, but it makes it a little bit cleaner and easier to read, in my opinion.
It depends for me. So at work, I'm 80% of the time, yes, but I can't give you a good example. But there's 20% of the time where I'm I don't really want to put a new line here, but it's fascinating. Yeah. And that just, I don't know. It's kind of nice that we have so many examples of different styles to like choose from. And of course, you can do your own. But like, it's like an easy way to see how other people view the world. And so like, I kind of view standard RB as the way like test double writes code. And I'm like, I really respect them. So I kind of want to see how they do it and learn from that. But it's cool. Anything else cool in Ruby or Rails land that we haven't talked about?
Oh, I was just reading through the Ruby 2.7 notes before we recorded, and just kind of getting excited for that to come out in Christmas, right? That's the typical release date.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm excited for that. And then what's really exciting is next year's. It got the much expected Ruby 3 coming out. That's going to be awesome. But there's a handful of little operators and stuff in Ruby 2.7, like the begin lists and endless ranges that, I don't know, they probably come in handy at some point, but I don't know. I don't typically use ranges terribly often.
You would be surprised how many times in the past like 2 months I've used ranges. Like I've used them more recently than I have in my entire career.
What kind of stuff are you using them for?
I use it a lot recently for seeding data.
Okay,
and
that makes sense. Yeah,
I just say like 10 ... random between. So here's what I do. I use a range to generate a random number between 1 and 50, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a range using rand range. And then I use that as the ending value of another range of like 1 to whatever this random value is. And then I loop through that.
Okay. Yeah. Generate
I've been doing a lot of that, and I don't really have a good explanation of why.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, if anybody has any questions about ranges, let me know.
Have you seen the numbered parameters in Rails 2.7?
I did see that, like where it's like a $sign number, $sign number.
No, it's like a _1, 2, 3.
Maybe I'm thinking of another that I think it was a feature that was proposed that maybe didn't make it through.
Oh, maybe. This one is kind of cool because like the example was like if you had an array and you need to map it and you can't the shorthand for the ampersand in a symbol name to call a method.
Right.
That one's nice and short, but if you can't call a method, maybe you need to interpolate it into a string or something. You always have to define the argument of the name of the object that gets passed in or whatever.
Right.
You can now do like a dot map and do curly braces and then _1 represents that. So you don't have to give it a name, and it's kind of a shortcut for that, which is pretty cool. So that might come in handy to just, shorten those little maps and things that I tend to do fairly regularly. And there's always times where I'm like, this seems annoying that I have to like add the pipes and a variable name and make the argument. Cause I'm like, there's only one thing and I don't really care what it's named. So yeah.
That's like actually a big thing that like annoys, not the right word. It's a big thing I like wish there's an alternative to. So I need to see that.
Yeah. And what I thought was particularly nifty about the feature was actually like, I don't know how many times you guys do this, but if you loop through an object and you don't care about one of the items in it, like a nested array, you can use the underscore just to assign a variable to it that you don't plan on using. It's effectively the same syntax. You just put a number after that underscore, and then you can reach for that value or whatever, which I thought was kind of cool because it's a very similar use that people use that underscore for. So I don't know, thought that was neat. Yeah.
Any more features? Because I have one that I'm really excited about that we've already talked about.
Oh, go ahead.
The pattern matching.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
It's different. It's different from pattern matching and like Elixir, like because it doesn't work where like you can pattern match like arguments for methods and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like case statement pattern matching, and it's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, because I mean, anytime you're doing something on a case, like if you're dealing with different types of objects, that's been really handy. But having this actually be able to break down an array in a case statement, that's pretty sweet. I'm really excited about that because that'll make just the boilerplate of digging into an array to find what you need is so much easier, I think. It's going to be neat.
I also want to shout out one of the features that got killed. The pipeline operator.
I know.
Didn't make it.
But it was confusing because it wasn't working in the same way that other languages did. So I can understand why they didn't accept it.
No, I get it. I totally get it. I was just looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it seemed like a pretty useful thing. Just because it adds a nice little... I mean, as long as it worked the same way that Elixir did, it was kind of a nice little thing. But, we kind of have fairly similar things in Ruby and other ways.
You can also use like... I can't remember the name of the method. I think maybe they aliased it as then. It's yield self. Yeah. So you like have an expression, then you called yield self, and it is the first argument to that next method. Or you like give it a block, and it's the argument passed in. I had a really, really cool use case for yield self when I was doing some Action Mailbox stuff, and I didn't end up using it. And so nothing in my life matters.
I just tweeted about the flip-flop operator, which I had no idea was the thing.
What is that?
But I guess it's been around for a while, like since Ruby 2.4 maybe. It's a range operator, but instead of like numbers or something on each side, you put conditionals. And so if you use it in an if statement, the example that they had was if you loop through the numbers 1 through 10 and you print out the number, if this flip-flop operator x equals 5 on one side and x equals 8 on the other, if you loop through that, basically it evaluates to false until the first one is true, and then it like keeps track of that internally until the second one is true, and then it returns false again. So it's pretty strange, but also kind of awesome.
It's cool, but my head's exploding.
Yeah, like if you read it in the code, you're just going to stare at it for a bit and be like, well, I kind of get it, but I don't get it. And I'm like, I'd probably just use a regular conditional all the time. A greater than or equal to 5 and less than or equal to 8 would be way more readable to me at a glance than this range operator, which is probably why it was like slated to be deprecated. But, it does in theory make sense as a range of conditionals, but that's kind of a strange concept, I guess. So it makes sense why it was kind of, but supposedly some legacy projects used it a bunch, and that's why it's not going away. So I don't know. I'm not sure what projects those were, but that's pretty interesting that someone was using it.
Yeah, some legacy geniuses.
Yeah. What else? We've got filter map. That one's kind of nice. It's kind of like a, map reduce kind of, or related to that sort of operation. Kind of using them to combine them in a single thing. That's nice. Tally, that's kind of cool. Numerator.produce will produce an infinite sequence where each next element is calculated by applying a block to previous. That's pretty cool. I like that. That could come in handy for sure. Yeah, I don't know what else. The keyword argument stuff was changing again, I think.
Yeah. Is it? But it's not like it's changing, but it's not breaking, right?
Yeah, and I think that's probably what was the reason, because it was going to break older code that used the keyword arguments. If I remember right, that was just like okay, maybe this is bad if we're going to break all this existing code. That was one of the big reasons why Python 3 took forever to get adopted, because I was using Python 2 up until 3 came out, and no one was like, oh, there's breaking changes. We'll just stick with Ruby or Python 2.7 or whatever it was. And yeah, no one wanted to upgrade. And that's such a cool thing about the Ruby community is everyone like pushes for the latest version and pushes that to change even more. So you don't get stuck behind in a bunch of old stuff, which I really appreciate. It's pretty awesome.
And you know what? Shout out Django 3 releasing.
Yeah, that was awesome. I don't know how long that's been in the hopper, but that is pretty cool. It's exciting.
Our father, David Heinemeier Hansen, even tweeted about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so also it's confusing because I got off Twitter, but I still have the remote Ruby Twitter, and so like it'll be like suggested people when I go to check. It's like, oh, I'll see what DHH is doing. Click, and then I fall down the rabbit hole.
So you're not really gone from Twitter. You're just hiding in the shadows.
I just hide in the shadows. And I don't follow anyone. I just whoever Twitter wants me to see that day, I say, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, just leave it to the algorithm. Well,
guide us dark towards.
Well, anything else this week?
Thinking.
Have you guys been looking into what's coming in Rails 6.1 recently?
Not recently.
No, I haven't kept up to date. No.
I am not super up to date, but there are a few things I've been keeping my eye on. Mainly the action component stuff. Recently, they added an ability to, you know how when you're testing mailers, there's a ability to like generate a preview.
Yep, just did a screencast on that actually.
Yeah, so they've added the same thing for action component.
Ooh, that's fantastic. That's exactly what that needs to, especially because it's like if it's supposed to work in that concept of like, give me some inputs and I'll produce this, and, that's a perfect example to have previews for. So,
that's cool as hell. I would have never thought to do that.
And that reminds me of the Rails conductor. I guess we'll probably be using that a whole lot more if we've got mailer previews and action component previews, and I don't know what else.
What I use for Action Mailbox too, like to send messages inbound.
Oh yeah, that's got its own views too for development. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like a very, very, very crappy form, and you just send emails and they come into Action Mailbox.
Yeah, and that's kind of the same concept that we have in Jumpstart Pro of like, turn on Stripe or Sidekick and we'll go ahead and install the gem and, drop in an example config file and stuff. So I like that a lot of having, it's really WordPressy, if that makes sense. Like, you have a UI that you can use to go edit some code for you. It's just more user friendly as long as you kind of understand what's going on behind the scenes. But, that's pretty convenient. I'm really excited. Andrew, what else is new in Rails 6, if you remember any of the other items?
I'm looking at the milestone right now. I think that was the thing I was most excited for because I have something I want to use with that. I know there's action component itself is coming in Rails 6.1, so that'll be cool. And let me see what else. There was something that DHH posted, but now I can't find it. It was something about monids, I think. And
he He posted a tweet about a link to, I think, a talk at RailsConf about monads.
Oh, maybe that's what it was. I think they're trying to put it into Rails, or maybe he was just experiencing with it. I don't remember, but I saw like a PR from him. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I didn't see the PR. I just saw him say that more people should experiment with it in Rails.
Gotcha. The other thing is, you can now do you can now query against like errors in your model. Like model errors are now an object instead of like a hash, which I think I don't have a use for that right now, but at my last job, I definitely would have.
Yeah, I'm thinking through that.
So basically you can do like model.errors.where name is foo bars 3.first or something like that.
I see what you're saying. Okay, that's cool.
Or you can also add them too, and like see if they're added, delete them, and a few other things, I believe.
Huh.
That
reminded me too of let's see. Active Storage is getting like a proxy and some other options so that you can actually link like directly to the files rather than having your requests go through Rails every single time, which has been like a surprise to a ton of people or a major complaint. So
that is tough because it just comes and just starts hammering your Rails app with.
Yeah, and you don't know it ahead of time. You're like, oh, file uploads are magic. And then you're like, what are all these requests for? So
it actually just makes it even more magical that it comes back through your app.
Yeah, and so that's been how do you put CloudFront in front of it? Well, good luck. And that, is an interesting, it's kind of a strange problem that we have with a lot of the stuff extracted from Basecamp, because they're like straight extracted from Basecamp, which is only their use case. And something as generic as file uploading, it requires, a unbelievably flexible approach, just because somebody might be wanting to upload videos or MP3s, and then, you need to be able to convert those. And there's currently basically zero support for doing anything like that without hacking your own setup and going through the Rails source code for that. But the alternatives are like Shrine, where everything's like unbelievably modular, and it's really easy to do anything in it. It's kind of funny that, Rails has I don't know, some of it just doesn't seem like as thought out as it should be if you're going to add it to the core framework, but it's also nice that we get those features just immediately added. And they've, they didn't do the carrier wave or paperclip style of pre-generate all the thumbnail sizes. You can do them on the fly, which makes for, CDNs and processing just to be, kind of a million times easier. So that is good, but it also, had a ton of drawbacks. So it's frustrating that some of those features have to take a whole release till they're actually usable for the average case. But that should make active storage probably a good default finally for most people's use of uploading avatars or whatever. So I'm excited for that for sure.
Do you ever watch the show Parks and Recreation?
I did not.
I have.
Andrew, there's this scene where Ben Wyatt gets fired, or not fired, but quits. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
I think so, yeah.
And he's at home. He's making a claymation video.
Yes, I do remember that.
And he sits down with Chris to watch it, and it's like 8 seconds, and he was like, I told Leslie that I compared it to Avatar. And all I can hear when I hear Avatar is that clip now, but Chris doesn't get it. I'm sad. Oh, shut up.
Oh, man.
It's okay. I get it. That was a good scene.
I'll have to watch that at some point. I've heard it's good, and I always see it like in memes and stuff on Imager and stuff. So,
Did you watch The Office?
oh yeah, Office was great.
Okay. So Shannon texted me while she was at the hospital because she was like not sleeping. They came out with an edition of Clue that is Office themed, and it is impossible to find. So like, Amazon had one in stock, and it was $150 because it's such a hot item.
Wow, that's awesome.
So I found it on HotTopic.com for a third of the price, back ordered, and I ordered it, and I felt like I was in high school again.
Man, you should have ordered all their copies and put them on Amazon.
Should have ordered some t-shirts while I was there. Like, that was the thing in high school, like go to the mall and chill in Hot Topic. So I just sat on the online store for a little while to see if it had the same effect.
That's funny. You didn't want to shell out $150 for it?
No, I have limits, Chris.
All right, fair enough.
Dumbest stuff. All right, well, I think this is a sign that maybe we should wrap it up.
Yeah, we got to go start our arbitrage on Clue for The Office.
Andrew will be joining us much more in the future, and we are excited. Andrew, thanks for joining us today. It's nice to have a third voice other than us two just spouting nonsense at each other.
Yeah, guys, I appreciate you inviting me on. It's been I love podcasting. I was really excited when Chris reached out and asked me if I wanted to start doing it again. So thank you guys for letting me be here.
Yeah, we're very excited to have you on, and it should be good for us too to kind of, when one of us gets busy or has a child in the hospital, we can fill in those gaps. So, yeah, well, awesome. I think that is it. If you guys enjoyed the episode, you should give us a rating on iTunes. We have not been asking people to do that enough, so you should definitely get back into the habit for that. You can find me on Twitter at EXCID3. Where can they find you guys?
On jasoncharns.com, or I'm on Twitter at Jack.
Nice. I'm on Twitter and GitHub and anywhere really as Andrew M. Codes.
Cool.
Dig it. All right. Well, good to chat with everyone, and we'll do it again soon.
All right. See you
guys.